Hi everyone, this is Molly Moss, and I will be doing my project on MLA Citation, a guide to in-text citation and block quotation. So the first thing I want to address is what is MLA citation and why should you care? An MLA citation is when you reference and quote other people's work within your own writing. This involves placing information in parentheses at the end of the sentence you are quoting. You will use in-text citation when you directly quote someone or when you reference or paraphrase someone's work. By using in-text citation, you prevent plagiarism. Plagiarism can get you in a lot of trouble both academically and professionally. You can fail a class, be expelled, lose your job, or even be fined. And when in doubt, cite your work. The only time you don't need to cite your work is when you are remembering something off the top of your head or you're quoting something that a lot of people know and you don't really have to look it up. But if you have to look it up, even if you think it's common knowledge, cite your work. It's always better to be safe than sorry. So let's look at the in-text citation rules. First is the author's name must appear either in the sentence or in parentheses at the end. And the page number where the quote is originally listed will always be in parentheses, not within the sentence. As you can see, I have right here. Only this is referencing a video I watched, and so instead of a page number, it's a timestamp, which I will address in a little bit. Other rules. It is important to lead or end the quotation with an indication of who is talking. So my example is Gandalf responds or said Gandalf. That's going to make a little more sense in my next slide. Do not place a period at the end of the quote inside the parentheses, but at the end of the in-text citation. If the author is introduced at the start of the sentence, you do not need to list them in your in-text citation, just the page number. If there is no author known, then you use the title of what you are referencing. If there is no page number, then you leave that part blank. And when referencing a video or film, like I did above, you replace the page number with a timestamp. And a little trick to remember is your in-text citation should match the first item listed on your works cited page. So if you are wondering whether or not you should put the last name down or the title of the page, or if you don't know if there should be multiple authors listed, go to your works cited page and see the first thing that is listed, and that will be what's going to go inside your quotes. So let's look at an example of in-text citation in use. Excuse me. One of my favorite books is The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. Set in the mythical world of Middle-earth, it follows the story of a hobbit named Frodo and his journey to destroy a magical ring of power that would lead to Middle-earth destruction. One of my favorite quotes comes from The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. A wizard named Gandalf is talking to Frodo about the ring's history, and Frodo tells Gandalf he wishes the ring had never come to him. Gandalf responds, quote, "So do I, and so do all who live to see such times, but it is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us." End quote. So as you can see, I have implemented my rules. I have an introduction of who is speaking, which is Gandalf responds. I have a comma and then the start of my quotation. I also want to point out that I have an ellipses. So an ellipses can be used when you want to let your reader know that there has been information omitted from the quote. So in this case, the original line in the book is, "So do I," said Gandalf, but because I have Gandalf responds, I felt like that would be really redundant and didn't help this quote, and so I took it out. Next, I have the end, which there is no period inside the quote, but at the end, like it is the full sentence. I have Tolkien within my parentheses because while I have Tolkien listed up here, he's not in the actual quotation sentence. So I placed him within the quotes. And then 82 is the page number where you can find this quote in my copy of The Lord of the Rings. Now let's look at block quotation. The most important rule to remember when it comes to block quotation is block quotations are used when you are quoting something longer than 3 full lines. So if you have a quote and it's running about, I don't know, 2.5, you can probably get away with it being a regular in-text citation, but if it's a full 3 lines or longer, you're going to want to use a block quote. So there are some setup rules you're going to want to remember. You remove the comma at the beginning of the quote and replace it with a colon. You remove the quotations. There is a space in between your paragraph and the quote itself. You use a hanging indent on both sides to bring the quote in and separate it from the other writing. You use punctuation at the end of the quote, not after the citation, and your quote should not be double-spaced. So let's take a look at an example I have written out using block quotation. The Lord of the Rings is filled with magical quotes. Another one of my favorites actually comes from the 2002 film version of The Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. In this scene, Frodo and Sam have been traveling alone, and Frodo has started to give up hope. He starts to question if he can complete their mission. Sam turns to Frodo and says, quote, "I know. By rights, we shouldn't even be here, but we are. It's like the great stories, Mr. Frodo, the ones that really mattered, full of darkness and danger they were. And sometimes you didn't want to know the end, because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad has happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. Those are the stories that stayed with you, that meant something, even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't, because they were holding on to something. That there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for." End quote. So as you can see, this quote is obviously longer than 3 lines, so it's definitely going to need a block quotation. And so the first thing I did was I separated it from the sentence with a space. I removed the comma with a colon. Then I went ahead and formatted it. So how I formatted it is I highlight this. I go up here to this ruler area and I adjust the indent. As you can see, you can adjust it a lot or not. I have it going in about 1/2 inch, and I have it going in almost a full inch at the end. Something to remember is if I were to have this indented, I would want this to be indented even more, because I want it to not align with the paragraph above. I want it to be a separate entity. But for the streamline of my PowerPoint, I do not have this indented. That would be more for when you're writing an actual formal paper. Now you can see that at the end I have my punctuation before my citation. I have the director's name for the video, and I have the timestamp which this can be found. And next if I were to continue this, I would go back up here and remove my indent, and then I would keep writing from there. Basically, you just want to make sure that people understand that this is a long quote and not get confused with where your writing is and where the quote is and where it ends. And so block quotations can really help with that. There are a few things to remember that we have learned so far. First is, when in doubt, cite your work. When using an in-text citation for a book or printed essay, you place the author's name and page number in parentheses. The period comes after the citation, unless it is a block quote. When using in-text citation for digital media like a movie, you place the title and the timestamp within the parentheses or the director. I have the director listed because I know who the director is, but you can't go wrong either way. Use block quotes when quoting something that is longer than 3 lines. And our handy little reminder is in-text citation should match the order of your works cited page. And here's an example of that. Here's my works cited page. If you see, I have, my first thing is a video that I watched, which is, it's by HS Language Arts. And if we go back to this video, you can see HS Language Arts. And you will be able to match these up with all of the quotations I have within my slideshow. So they will be easy to find and easy to reference later on. I hope I answered any questions you might have had about in-text citation and block quotations. Block quotations is something I struggled with all semester, and I think I finally nailed it down, and hopefully now you do too. I wish everyone luck in the future, and thanks for watching my video.